10, so we won't get started until 3 o'clock on the nose here. It is 3 o'clock on the nose, and we are Central Time, so let's go ahead and get started. I think we're started here. I'm waiting for my cue here that we're officially starting, so.
Thank you for joining us here this afternoon. We look forward to talking to you.
This is very informal. It's Friday afternoon, and just had to decide not to have happy hour here or beer or anything like that. So, okay, so we are ready to go. We got our live thumbs up. So my name is John Howe. I am the Executive Director of the Raptor Resource Project, and we are going to be here talking about the Decorah North Nest Eagles here today, and Amy Reese is here. I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi everybody, I'm Amy Reese from the Raptor Resource Project, and thank you for joining us here today. We're very excited to talk to you. The first question we got was, if parents progress at vastly different places in a nest, would the parents continue to maintain the nest until all the eaglets have flown off? So we really haven't seen a fledge that was more than, I want to say, 4 days in any of our nests. But yes, the parents do continue to come in. The eagles don't immediately become independent after they fledge. It's kind of like a baby that's learning how to walk and then run. So they spend a lot of time taking care of them. Eventually the young become proficient hunters and flyers because while hunting and flying is instinctive, being good at it is learned, and then they'll disperse about mid-August or so. But the parents provide some level of care in the first few weeks.
Okay, and I think I'll start with number 2 question here. When it was obvious that DN3 would not survive, was there any thought of rescuing him to raise in captivity for educational purposes? So we certainly have been monitoring DN3 continuously here through the time frame here and watching very closely. So looking back at the photos, I guess early photos, it didn't look like there was that much difference between DN1, 2, and 3. It did become obvious though as eagles start doing what they do, and that is there's some competition for food, and we saw some time periods where there wasn't a lot of food in the nest, that some eagle behaviors of my food first and rough activity with DN3 and DN2 being exhibited by DN1, that was going on. So we were looking at that, and here's the things that we would typically consider. We have a pair of eagles that really have been wild. We haven't had cameras up in this tree before, so we took very stringent precautions on this nest to make sure that we would not scare these eagles away, and that we would be able to see them after we put the cameras and the microphone up. So in this tree, the camera and microphones are actually about 18 feet away on a branch, and it was quite precarious to try to climb and get into that nest compared to some of the other nests where the nest is right on the main trunk and base of the tree. This one, actually, there's a big branch like a hand reaching out towards the sun, and the main trunk is quite a ways away, so not easy to get into the nest. As you can see, it's been raining, bark gets wet, it's got lichens, and it gets slippery. You have to get up into the tree, you have to shoot a line up there, you have to do quite a bit of work just to get that up there. And even the thought of shooting a line up and hit with a crossbow or something like that and hitting one of the eaglets. So that's one consideration. The other is we don't want to impact these eagles. Some people asked, hey, we saw that other eagles were rescued. We had the Southwest Florida eagle cam get line around its ankle, and so we're out on a hillside like this, and we don't get cherry pickers out there with a boom out there. You can't do that. We're out in the middle of a woods on private property, and we also have consideration of the property owners there too. So it's not accessible like some of the other eagle cams that have been accessed to do work. So, and the other thing that we think about is we have some very talented people here that do work, and you're always taking a risk when somebody goes up and climbs. We've got people who are probably as expert as they get with Kike Arnold and Neil Reddig, and then people who have less experience climbing, Amy and Dave Kester, some of our board members, and then there's people like me who have even less that rely on Amy and others to help tell me what to do, right? So all those considerations go into that. And what would be the benefit? Okay, we would pull an eagle out of there that it's just like a child, really. You will be taking care of that eagle for the rest of its life. So there's financial considerations there. There are considerations of having somebody dedicated and accept the responsibility to do that. So think about that. Eagles live how long? 15, maybe?
Oh boy, I don't know how long they live in captivity.
So let's say they live 10,
it's maybe even as long as 30 to 40
10, 15 years in captivity. That's a pretty big commitment. And I know we have SOAR and we have others that we work with that do that, but every choice you make like that has a significant impact on carrying through and following through with that. Otherwise, really, the effort would be for nothing if that eagle. Lastly, the other thing that we were thinking of is, we think that we knew what was going on. It's not guaranteed that if we would have tried to rescue DN3 that it wasn't something other than just not getting enough food, probably, but we can't be sure of that. So if it was something else and we miscalculated, we do that effort for nothing, and the eaglet would die anyway. So I don't know, anything else to add?
I don't have anything else to add. I guess we'll go on to question number 3. How do eagles know to return to the same area year after year? So in research that's been done, and some of it has been done by our friend and board member Brett Mandernack at Eagle Valley, we're finding out that eagles that do migrate tend to have really high fidelity also to their migrating and nesting grounds, their wintering grounds. So if I'm a Canadian eagle, I'm nesting up somewhere in Ontario, and I come down and I winter along the Mississippi River, I'm usually traveling almost the exact same route year after year. We think among eagles that migrate, they use a couple of different methods to determine where they are. One, a lot of birds are magnetically sensitive, so they can use magnetic lines of force around the earth to orient themselves in a north-south direction. We believe they use starlight. A surprising amount of birds migrate or travel at night, so they can use the positions of stars in the sky to help orient themselves. It was interesting to me to learn. I didn't think that was possible. And then they can navigate with land features. If you look at the Mississippi River, for example, it is a very navigable feature. It's clearly seen from the air. It would be an excellent thing to migrate along. So would say any coast, so we have flyways around the coast. So our mountains. So there are all these land features that we don't think of because we don't think of being up in the air to look at, but eagles can see them very clearly, and we believe they use them to navigate as well. So there are 3 primary methods: visual navigation, starlight for birds that travel at night, and we've seen it occasionally in eagles wearing transmitters, and then magnetic sensory organ in their head that helps them feel lines of force.
Right, and so with the studies with the transmitters that Brett Mandernack and Bob Anderson and Amy and others were doing, I believe it was the young eagles that were doing most of the migrating up into up northern reaches of Canada, up towards Hudson Bay and back down. But these parents, the Decorah eagles, once they are established and they are adult and they pick an area, they are not moving around that much. So we see the Decorah eagles down by the fish hatchery. We see them year-round. We don't see them as much when we can go up legally and do things in the nest, and that's usually late July, August, September, and then once they start their courtship and nest building activities, then we cannot get close to them or interfere. So I guess it depends on the stage of their life also. If they are older and they're established, they're going to be in their home area year-round unless a major event would happen to cause them to leave. But when they're younger, they are moving around, and we've found that they go quite far, and they return right back to Iowa. Bob was tracking eagles with that had radio transmitters on them. So it's a good question. Thank you. So let's see, number 4. Is there a particular reason why you chose not to ban these birds? I guess the adults here that we're looking at Decorah North, this is the first year that we've really even watched these eagles, so we've not even had an opportunity to do that for them. For adult birds and young birds, they have to be trapped, so you have to lure them in with food or something and then trap them and go through that whole process. So a lot of thought has to go into doing that. It's something that is done by experienced, trained, permitted master banders and eagle handlers, raptor handlers. And Brett and Bob and Neil and Dave Kester probably fit that category and they're all board members that are part of Raptor Resource Project, maybe also Laura Johnson also. So the Decorah North Eagles, this is the first year that we've watched them. We never have had an opportunity to ban them. I don't believe that we have any intention of doing that. But the easier thing that we have done in the past with some of the Decorah fish hatchery eagles is to ban the fledglings, the subadults, and then track them. That has been done. Actually, did they get banded?
Yeah, they did.
They were transmitted.
So what happened is, Brett doesn't like to put the transmitters on until they're about 3 weeks old, or 3 weeks, excuse me, after they've been on the wing for about 3 weeks. So at the time we put the transmitters on, we also went ahead and put bands on them. And, you know, like John said, we don't know if we'll be doing that this year or not. Right. If we are, we'll let people know.
Right. And as far as other nests, I know we've got partners out, Seneca Nation of Indians and others, and I know that after the feathers come through, they before fledging, they will go up and do banding in nests. It is a permitted activity. It's usually part of a monitoring program, and we really don't have a banding monitoring program established for the eagles in the Decorah area. So we probably, unless it takes work, and we're doing other things. We're getting ready to go out and do Bob Anderson's life passion work, and that was the reintroduction of peregrine falcons to the Mississippi River Flyway. And Amy and Dave Kester are preparing to go out, and we'll be doing banding activities. So we're pretty busy on that right now. So, okay. Is it possible that some eaglets could sustain traumatic brain injury in the nest from aggressive siblings, which in turn may affect their lives down the, I need to scroll down here, down the road, such as not being as skilled a hunter and provider for their own offspring? That's a pretty good detailed question.
I'm just going to say honestly, we don't know that. In the eaglets that we've worked with and the nests that we've seen, we only had 1 year where we thought there was possibly a developmental delay. That was 2014 in the Decorah eagle's nest, when first of all the eggs were laid in extreme cold, and then we saw sort of a black fly hammer was what Bob called it. And he felt that possibly one of those two things or both of them had caused some delay in the eaglets because, well, they fledged in the time frame of eagles fledging. So it seems to me they fledged around 75 days, which is usually fine for fledging. They experienced significant trouble when they fledged something we hadn't seen before. So I don't know about long-lasting effects, and I don't know about brain injury. Physical development could suffer as a result.
Yes. We don't have the experience or research to really tell much detail about something like that. Nor have we seen that kind of aggressive behavior. We have not seen it with the original Decorah eagle nest, significant aggressive siblicide type behavior. This is the first time that we've seen it, and I guess so we really don't have a history to be able to tell much more about that. So, okay, number 6, do you think little bit suffered from lack of TLC, food, warmth, and injury from number 1? It was definitely evident that there was less food delivered to when we call them DN3. We typically don't put names on eagles, but I know this is the Explore audience, so we can refer to it DN3 as a little bit. So a couple things there. We have the behavior that was learned, and that this is the eagle thing, it's for survival. Think about it, the eaglet that is largest, that's oldest, that if you literally the pecking order, if they show and exhibit that behavior to demand food first, what that's going to express in nature is that at least in hard food times that one of the eagles is going to get all the food. That would be the extreme. So if hunting and gathering for food was very scarce and not very successful, at least one of those eaglets is going to survive. So I think the aggressive eagle, and it's probably is usually the older one, the first hatch is probably going to be the one that would survive. So that's something that has been bred into eagles and their behavior for centuries. So we know that that is there. So that's one thing. You could see the behavior of DN3 and DN2 from the aggressive behavior of DN1, and it was conditioned, I believe. It was a habit response, a conditioned response is when mom, dad comes in with food and I want to go partake in that, I am going to get pecked at by DN1. And you could see that both of them, after that time period, the conditioning that they went through, they would stand back. They would maybe try, and then there would be a lunge at them, and then they would stand down, and they would stand back until, I guess, until DN1 would get a full crop, and then we would hope that DN3 would get filled, and DN2 would get filled, and then be go into a food coma, if you want to call it that, or
that's a fine term.
or topple over because they were too top heavy, and then DN3 would get some food. So that was definitely something that we saw. So the behavior that they learned, the pecking order, if you want to call it that, for available food, and then the amount of food that's there, those were things that did affect that. And Amy, you were talking about just the lack of the thermal down, all of it coming in, and some of the cold weather that we had. Yeah, it all kind of came in together,
I think. And I was actually pretty hopeful until about midday of the day that DN3 died. I did think eagles are very hardy. He'd shown, we don't actually know the gender, a lot of sort of spunk in the nest. So I was hopeful, but as the day came on, the weather was cold, it was damp. The parents were more attuned to the brooding needs of the oldest two, and the older two really didn't need daylight brooding anymore unless it was very wet like today. So the parents weren't brooding. DN3 kept trying to crawl onto the other two, and by and large they submitted to that, but they don't know how to brood. They weren't intentionally brooding DN3. They were just providing some warmth as everybody cuddled together. So, I agree with John. It was kind of a combination of all three things. There wasn't any one thing. It was one thing after another.
Right. And the first part of it, lack of TLC, I guess we do see a little bit of difference, and that's one of the things that we thought would be very interesting. There's big differences between these two pair of eagles. One is kind of like the country eagles, and the other is the city eagles. So we got the country eagles have one of the largest nests that we've seen, up to 9 feet in diameter in one direction of the axis of the nest, about 7 in the other. And so one of the things that we notice is it looks like the parents aren't right near the eagles quite as much as they are at the original Decorah nest. So we've been seeing some differences in behavior like that. I think people had asked, hey, where do they go? And we've been looking around, and usually when we pan away from the nest, we'll see that a parent is lurking nearby. And they're around, but they are not feeling the need, I guess, to go and sit next to the younger eaglets in the nest. And I don't think that that's a problem for the two now, DN1 and DN2. They've got their thermal down in, and I guess you've seen, I was just watching before, and we saw another eagle term, the mambrella, forming, to shield them from the rain. And so we'll see that when the weather gets colder and the rain comes down, that the parents will do that type of thing. I guess it's dadbrella if it's the dad, right?
Pop tent.
Okay, pop tent.
Okay, so the next question is, how much food do you estimate a chick needs daily to survive? And I actually went to the board for this one because I truly do not know. Laura Johnson suggested that probably 3 days would be fine, possibly as long as 4 days. You know, ideally, what we say about birds of prey is they consume 10% of their own body weight every day, and that's great. That's probably what they do, but they don't do that every single day. They're wild animals. Sometimes they get more. It's one of the reasons they have a crop. It's kind of like a built-in refrigerator, so they can store food. Sometimes they get less, and it is okay if they get less. So the best answer that I can give you on that would be probably 3 to 4 days. And we did see, again, the 3, although it was submitting and eventually really not trying to eat, it was initially being fed quite well. So while I think hunger is probably, or starvation is probably part of the picture, again, it's just a part.
Yeah. And one thing we didn't mention about what DN3 went through, I guess, we did see that it was huddling in with the other 2, and the other 2 are quite a bit larger. And during sleeping or whatever, you know, the weight of the other eaglet, the larger eaglet on top of DN3 could have been a factor too. Just, you know, a little bit of weight on and not as easy to breathe, if you want to call it suffocation or whatever. That could have had something to do with part of the equation there too. So.
And the next question, what do you do with the eagle data or information that you have collected?
So I guess one thing that I think is really neat that's out there for anyone is that the video is out there for pretty much anybody who would want to take a look at this, right? We do have the Collective Commons or
yes, yeah,
licensing type thing about rebroadcasting and using the video, but anyone can watch the video and make little video clips and do things and compare things. So there's that opportunity for anyone at the grade school level, at the college level, at the research level. We're collecting data, video, audio, that it's just not out there in the form 24/7 like has been collected with these bird cams. So the neat thing is that's out there for people to use. That type of data is there, and I guess your imagination, it's up to you. If you're interested in raptors and you wanted to do a research project or something like that, all this data is available. And comparison between nests, we've got different eagle nests now after the huge popularity of the original Decorah eagle broadcasted cam. There's a lot of eagle nests out there, different parts of the country. So there's that option to look at, you know, how are the ones in Florida or California different? They've got much warmer temperatures. They don't have the snow factor. They don't have the cold factor. And we see that with Fort St. Vrain. We lost a whole clutch of eaglets this year just because of cold weather. So geography has a huge thing to do with it too.
Yeah, and personally I would like to develop, now, you know, it's kind of funny because it's like, hey, we've been watching eagles and we've had all this data forever, but really it's only been since 2011. And in 2011, as far as I know, there were basically 2 cams. There was us and there was Norfolk. If there were more, I'm not aware of it. Now we have this huge, massive collection of cams. So I would like to develop some metrics actually, and online observation tool where people could share just some really key data about the nests they're watching. As far as the transmitter data, that actually was a project, a multi-year longitudinal study being done by Brett Mandernack. We think it is the longest multi-year study of eagles in the wild that's ever been conducted, and that data is, he reports that personally in papers that are written in research journals and then released, usually through research journals, although he also does some public speaking on it as well.
So, and I know on our website you can see the travels of the fledged eagles that did get transmitters, and so we do have some of that data. And the longest set was from D1.
D1 was incredible. She fledged in August of 2011. She spent in her first summer, she went kind of up around Duluth, Minnesota, and a little west. But the year after that, was either 2 or 3 years that we tracked her, she went to Polar Bear Park on Hudson's Bay in Ontario. It's an incredible journey. I believe at her greatest point she was 930 miles from her natal nest. And then every winter she would come back down to Northeast Iowa. We never saw her directly at the nest, but she was certainly in the area, and she would kind of travel between Decorah and Rochester and run loops. So that's some ways that we share data, and I would really like to think about some more, because this is an incredible, valuable thing to have all these people out watching and comparing nests. The next question: do other birds use the eagle's nest when they leave? So in some nests, yes, if the parents leave. Neither the Decorah North Eagles or the Decorah Eagles ever leave. However, we do see birds using their nests while they're there.
Right.
We were watching little sparrows. I know you guys have seen that too, right? They come and they take grass out of the nest. They're very, very bold and north. I was kind of surprised by that, although the nest is so big, maybe it's not as much of a factor. Yeah. And then we've also had little birds nesting in sort of the undercarriage of the nest. So a nest is kind of like a coral reef. It doesn't just serve the eagles, it serves a number of other animals as well.
Right. And before eggs were laid, all the way through October, November, mom and dad are building nest. And one of the things that I think is really neat for Decorah, the main Decorah nest, there was more nest building activity that went on there.
Yeah.
And Amy put together a time lapse of the nest building process, which is really neat to watch. But during that time where the nest building was happening, I think at both of these nests, they're in corn country. So you see a lot of corn husks, and you see a cob of corn with husk, and then there might be a couple little pieces of corn kernel there. But we've got, in both nests, I think we've got mice families that are living in the nest, and they show up at night, and every once in a while you'll see mom or dad. Well, it's usually mom at night, right? So you'll see a big wing flop, trying to, so they can hear the mice, and I'm not sure. On some of the nights where the moon is out and there's some light pollution, that there's some security lights that are on in the Decorah fish hatchery area, but there's much less light available at night at the Decorah North nest. So their ability to see is probably more hearing that there's something there, and flopping or whatever with wing slap or whatever to try to get the mice out of there. So
we did have owls shop around at the Decorah nest, but they never did actually take it over.
Right. And we were wondering about that, if that would happen or could happen in past years too. So which number are we on here? Number 10. Could great horned owls take a juvenile bald eagle who had just fledged, as is being questioned on the Southwest Florida Eagle Cam? Someone saw the owl swoop in and knock the juvie from its perch during the night. So, well, we know that great horned owls will predate fledgling falcons. I guess I don't have experience watching them do that with eagles.
Yeah, I don't think it can be ruled out. It would definitely have to be knocked off its perch, because of course they're not flying around at the same time of the day. But I can't rule that out.
Yeah. So, like I said, we know that. Historically, that was it was a concern in the days of the falcon releases when they're being brought back, and not quite sure about great horned owls and eagles. Okay.
Have you ever seen an eaglet as dominant as DNN1?
Well, we haven't. I think we mentioned that before, that we haven't seen it at the original Decorah eagle nest. And one thing I should mention about that nest, if you don't know that much about it, it is probably one of the most selectively picked eagle nests, I think, that any eagle would ever pick. And if you're an eagle and you're out shopping for a home, I don't think you could find a better place to set up your nest than right next to a fish hatchery, DNR fish hatchery. So there's usually not a thought of any lack of food in the area. It's easy pickings. There's other, there's rabbits, there's squirrels, there's other things that are near parks and things. So that's one thing that is quite a bit different between the Decorah North nest and the original Decorah eagle nest. But back to the question.
The root cause of problems in this nest appears to be a lack of consistent food supply. How large is the creek we can see, and is there a larger river nearby? The creek you can see is actually a pretty decent trout stream. I've gone back and forth on this issue personally because we also watch a nest in Fort St. Vrain at the Xcel Energy Fort St. Vrain Power Plant, Platteville, Colorado, right next to the Platte River. There's a prairie dog colony just right downstream from them. There's a river that's full of fish. At Decorah North, we have a river that's full of fish, and it's a fairly wild area with deeply folded hills, but also open land where there's a lot of room for hunting. So I've gone back and forth about food availability because it doesn't seem to me like there should be an issue, and we've certainly seen them bring food into the nest.
Right, we've seen muskrats, we've seen some, I think we've seen squirrel at Decorah North, and probably all the different
and placenta.
Yeah, and we've seen, you've seen cattle there, and we're around cattle farming areas and some row crop production of corn and other crops around there too. So the normal things that would be there. There's raccoons. You can hear coyotes at night, although they're probably not something that, unless there were remains. Eagles are scavengers, so if there were pieces or remains of larger mammals or other animals like that, they could probably bring that up into the nest.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So that we think that could be an influencing factor that maybe influenced the magnitude of the pecking order or the siblicide, whatever you want to call that. It could have been the magnitude of that. So I don't believe that there's a larger river nearby. But
the creek or small river really is well supplied with fish.
Next question, is the sex only determined by appearance or gestures?
Gesture. Oh, it is gestures, I'm sorry.
Yeah, gestures. I guess the big thing is size, right, Amy?
Yeah,
so,
females are larger than males.
Yeah.
We try not to make guesses on camera because cameras, even really good cameras like we have now thanks to John, they can foreshorten. You can have big males and small females. So in general, when you're looking at an eagle, the larger one is the female. Now if you're out in the field, let's say that we did decide to ban these guys, we would take measurements. You look at bill depth, I want to say culmen depth, and I believe hallux claw, but I could be wrong about that. And basically the bigger on those are the female. And in general, like when I'm kind of making a guess, officially no, we don't announce a gender unless we've done the measurements and know for sure. But when I'm making a guess, I tend to look at size and then also beak depth. And then the commissure, a lot of eagle watchers say, so that part of their mouth in the female will extend further back. However, I can also say I've seen camera angles with mom and dad where we know who's who, that can be very deceptive that way too. So
right.
In general, size.
Right. And if we're talking about adult eagles, and how we tell the difference between the two, there are some similarities between the two females at the original Decorah nest and Decorah North. The female has a little bit more of a brow ridge, and then there's a little bit more of a sunken in or darker colored shadowed feathered area below the brow in the eye area there. So, and very interesting, I haven't looked and specifically looked for it. Maybe Amy can answer this in Decorah North with the female, but female at Decorah has small dark black feathers in the brow area, the top of the head, along the face, and even underneath the beak, along the throat. So I don't know. We have the capability to look that close at mom at the North Nest, but I guess I just haven't looked at that yet to see. But no dark colored black or dark brown feathers on dad.
No.
And
no,
that's a
had
big
snowy
distinction,
white.
right? So that's one of the easier ways to tell them apart.
And then
okay.
Mom at Decorah North, this is not true of all eagles, so this is not a blanket statement, but the Decorah North mom has some white kind of on what we call her pantaloon, so down by her legs, so look for that.
Okay.
As this is the first year to have the cam on the nest, is there any history of these adults? No. We know that this is the third nest on the property, and that is all we know.
Right. I guess is the most I can tell you is that when Bob and I were doing reconnaissance for this nest last summer, we were scouting out the area and we looked down into the woods and saw a fledgling, and so the best we know is that there was at least one eagle that survived and fledged last year, and So at a minimum there was one. Okay. In regards to bald eagles, is it considered scientifically taboo to apply human emotions to them? I've noticed the anthropomorphic observations have been made quite often. Boy, I guess we know, and people done a lot of studies about animals and what they do know and what they don't know and what they can do. I always look at it as mostly it's inbred behavior, it's instinct, it's what and it seems amazing what they can do. Just like we know that birds of prey can travel to different continents and then come right back to the same area almost the same exact day each year, even with some of the changes in climate that are happening that we're seeing over the last decade or so. It seems like they still show up at the same time of year, and they've got that ability to geographically locate and hone in where they're going. So many aspects of what they do are amazing. We can't understand it. Researchers try to figure that out, and I know Amy mentioned some things about their ability to align with different factors of their surroundings. But as far as cognitive abilities and thinking and cognitively feeling pain and things like that, it's only just a jerk reaction of an animal like that. So I guess
I'm going to give you a little different opinion than John, but I am going to preface this. This is something that gets argued about a lot. It is far from settled. When Jane Goodall started her work with chimpanzees, you would never ever give an animal a name, and considering that an animal could possibly have an emotion was as unscientific as you could get. Just turn in your PhD badge and get out of here. Now, Frans der Waal, who's a great primatologist, just did a book on animal emotion, and in listening to him talk, what he'll say is that yes, animals do have emotions. However, we make a mistake when we think they have the same emotions that we do all of the time. So personally, I think that we see some emotion there because I don't believe they're emotionless, but they don't have the same emotions or the same behaviors that we do. If we had a child die, for example, we would not then take the child apart and feed it to our other children. That would never happen, but we see it in eagle nests. That's not bad. It's just the way they live. Similarly, well, I believe that they're attached to and bonded with their children to some degree when they're in the nest. I don't know what it feels like to have the fishhook call of dispersal pulling at my mind, taking me from everything I've known. I think that must be fascinating. I would love to know what that feels like, but I don't. So is it scientifically wrong to ascribe any emotion at all? It's been considered so for a long time, but that's starting to change. Do we ascribe them our thoughts and our emotions and our ways of life? No, because then we devalue theirs.
Right. And there's a difference there between primates that are more like humans, right? And then raptors, birds of prey, and others as far as that. Certainly with primates, in other mammals, there would be a little bit more of a scientifically proven possibility of things more like a human. So we don't tend to say they're a deadbeat dad or
no.
Things like that. Those are things that people might try to connect something like that and say, I don't see him here. I think that he should be feeding them. He should know better and know that he needs to do that, but there is obviously no connection for anything like that. And that's what we try to help remind people. We know that people don't have the same experience that we do in looking at these creatures and these amazing raptors, eagles in this case. So the best we can do is educate, right? That's what one of our prime missions is, with the education of school children and other people that watch these for pleasure and really just to get connected with nature and watch what's going on. So I think it can do a disservice to them and maybe it's more of a problem for the person who's projecting the human tendencies onto an animal like that. That's not what they're experiencing and going through. So that's why we want to try to make sure that people don't make that mistake. So, but it happens.
Yeah, it does. And the deadbeat dad actually was a very good comparison in a case where we're projecting our lives onto their lives. So That was a good example.
And one thing that we noticed, I think a lot of questions came up. There was one specific day I know, because I'm looking at the cameras and moving them around and adjusting light settings between night and day each day. since I think September. So
Yeah.
to see it every day. We saw some territorial issues come up, and there were questions about why aren't the parents at the nest and where are they going, what's going on. So we've seen that more at the North Nest than I think what we've seen in the past. I know we've seen them notice others flying by at the Decorah original nest, but it seems like it's drawn them away from the nest longer lengths of time up at the Decorah North Nest here, and what we've been observing here this year. And we did see a subadult come through, and we saw some really interesting behavior there, some muted calls, and then just the spreading out of the wings to protect the eggs and the young there too. So, okay. Which one are we on here?
How long has this pair been nesting at DNN? We know it's the third nest on the territory. I believe it's the third year of this nest. We had 1 year on another nest and maybe 2 years. So I think we've got 6 years here, but we don't know if it's the same pair.
Okay. Yeah, that's all we know. How far can an eagle see? I know they got great eyesight.
Sorry, I don't know
half
that
a
one
mile,
off the top of my head. It's unfortunate we don't have a mod or two in this one, because they could probably tell you off the top of their heads. That's not a piece of knowledge that I have.
I can tell you it depends on the humidity, and is it a clear day, and that's about as much as I can say.
Is it dark out?
Okay. Since Iowa is an area that gets severe storms, would the mother protect the eaglets if a storm hits, or would she abandon them? I think we've seen that, and we've seen it through the winter.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one of the neat things about watching eagles up in the northern territories here is how they handle the winter weather, the snowstorms, and just an amazing structural component of an eagle is the insulation effect of their down and their feathers and things. And at the North Nest here, we saw what we had seen other years at the original Decorah nest, and that is how snow can fall on top of an eagle that is incubating eggs over the night, and there's not even the least sign of any snow melting at all from body heat.
Oh, it's extraordinary.
The heat loss, I think if you tried to put a infrared heat camera to see if there's much of a heat loss or a signature coming off of that eagle, it would be very minimal. So that's one neat thing up here with the snow is you see this big nest in a pile of snow with inches of snow on top of that eagle and what might be looking like a little lump of a head.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden in the morning when mom or it would be mom typically would get up, it's just this get up, spread the wings, shed the snow. It just kind of slides off the feathers, which have a layer coating of oil on them, and then get up and shake, and most of that snow that was on top of her and the eaglets or the eggs is gone. So as far as rain, I guess we see the protection, right?
Yeah.
The mombrella.
Yeah, there are some documented cases of eagles leaving nests after people have intruded on them. Some, because there are also, of course, cases where they come right back. But I can't, off the top of my head, think about a case where eagles just abandoned a nest because of storms or weather or cold or lightning or anything like that.
I can say that we've heard from researchers that we know about eagles abandoning the nest when there were young eaglets there from human activity. And things like that. So, I mean, that's one thing that we considered is the
this whole
effect,
rescue,
this whole issue of would we do a rescue when you've got two healthy eaglets there? There would have to be a very high hurdle of a good reason to put at jeopardy the two healthy eaglets there and possibly force the adults away from the nest because of human intervention.
Okay, so the next question is, can you talk a little about pecking order as a behavior pattern in animal groups, maybe as evolutionary strategy under resource scarcity? Could this help us understand how the parents interact with their offspring? So, John,
we kind of answered some of this
we have
already.
answered some of this. So, John talked earlier about pecking order, about resource scarcity, and about how resource scarcity might impact pecking order. And it's also well documented in bald eagle nests. We haven't seen it in Decorah, and we know that the parents there just pile prey up in the nest. So, it definitely occurs. It's believed to be an evolutionary strategy. In times of scarcity, the youngest and presumably weakest eaglet then would die, leaving more food for the other two. And I do believe it helps us understand the behavior.
Right. And what we've seen is whichever eaglet is closest to the parent is the one that's going to get fed. So that standing aside because of that behavior, that learned behavior from the cause and effect of being pecked at and being tumbled around or whatever.
Yeah.
We saw that very, very clearly. We saw that behavior being exhibited after repeated attempts.
Yeah,
of that.
absolutely.
So the one that's closest by is the one that gets fed. It's not like, okay, we're going to divide this up and you get this equal share and you get this equal share. And I'm sure that many people have gotten some neck strain from moving over and wanting to move an eaglet
or
physically,
come on,
physically move an eagle over closer towards the parent, or hold one of them back so the other one could eat. We all have that feeling, and we all kind of tend to do that kind of thing. But that's a human. It's
normal survival behavior for them. So we have, how can you tell a male from a female bald eagle? I've read that female raptors are larger, but is there any other way? I usually see them alone. Out in the field, the only way you can tell a male eagle from a female eagle is size, period. The only raptor I can think of off the top of my head that has any other sexual differentiation is American kestrel. The males are not only smaller, they have a lovely, really pretty shade of blue, and the females do not have that. There could be some other raptors I'm unaware of that also display color sexual dimorphism, but bald eagles do not, so size is the only thing.
Okay. More and more, we're seeing delayed incubation of eggs. Is the situation that occurred at the nest a good reason for this delayed incubation in order to keep the eaglets approximately growing at the same rate? So I'll let you start off with that one.
Okay, that's really an interesting question to me because it's something that we ended up talking about ourselves. So bald eagles don't normally delay incubation because the temperature that they lay eggs at will not allow them to. If they didn't sit on the first egg, if you're laying eggs in whether that's below freezing, you have to sit on them right away. Otherwise, it won't just be that you'll have suspended development within the egg, which is fine. The egg will actually die, the embryo inside will die, and the egg can freeze and crack. So that's not normally an issue with bald eagles. There was a lot of discussion about whether that was something we saw this year. Because it did seem like the eagles were staying off their eggs a little more than they normally do. And I can tell you, actually, we have several peregrine falcon nests, including the awesome Great Spirit Bluff nest, where we had 4 hatches on the same day. Peregrine falcons usually delay incubation until the 3rd egg. They, however, then normally sit down and incubate all of the eggs. So you'll see some staggered hatching. And we're really seeing a lot more nests hatch with more young hatching together at the same time this year. So if you can delay incubation, absolutely it's a good idea. Because it's better to have all your young at the same phase of development when they grow so rapidly. So everybody that needs brooding is being brooded at the same time. Everybody that is learning how to eat by themselves as opposed to having parents stuff food down their mouth is having that happen at the same time. Everybody's the same size, so you don't have bigger eaglets or other birds sort of hiding out the food and establishing such a severe pecking order. However, that can't always be done. We may have seen some delay this year, but I don't really feel comfortable saying that until we have it's something more than anecdotal evidence.
And geographically, down in Florida, California, you probably wouldn't expect to see a temperature effect there of worrying about the eggs getting too cold and then be not being able to hatch because they froze or whatever. Up here in the north, in the colder winters, that would be an issue. Although this year, I think one of the things that we commented on was that we did have a pretty mild winter, and some of the temperatures when eggs were laid were quite warm. We were even up into the 70s, I think, one time when they were on the eggs. So
this is the mildest year since 2012, and 13 and 14 was so insanely cold. So this has actually been kind of nice that way. Right. At any rate.
Okay. Could you explain incubation and why some eaglets wait to start incubation until all eggs have been laid and others do not? So
we actually just kind of covered that.
Yeah,
it really has to do with temperature. Eagles in the north have to incubate immediately because it's cold out. Eagles in warmer regions do not. So some eagles may delay incubation. I haven't read much about that subject. Eagles in the north do not.
Okay. DN2 seems so submissive to DN1 and also drops its head to mom. What are its survival chances as it gets older? I thought it might struggle, but someone mentioned that it might do better since it has to work to get food now. I've been busy, I've watched just a little bit in the last couple days now after DN1.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen as much of that behavior, but I haven't seen as many feeding events here either.
Yeah.
So.
I would guess that DN2 will survive. They're very close in size, they're very close in development, they're doing the same kinds of things, and they have the same kinds of needs. So I think there's an excellent chance for DN2 to survive. I would be very, very surprised if DN2 did not. At
this age. And I think that we've talked or heard that, as age progresses for the eaglet, the chances for the siblicide and dying from something like that are less.
One of the things I'm interested to see personally is if we have kind of a decrease in sort of this dominant submissive behavior as they get older, because in Decorah that did tend to drop off. So I'll be very curious to see if it drops off here. This is a more aggressive nest in general, so maybe it won't.
Yeah, right. Okay, let's see, things did move here.
Owl eggs and emu eggs.
Owl eggs and emu eggs move when a sound is made, such as a whistle or parent call. Do eaglets make sounds before pipping, and can the parents hear it?
Yes, they do. In fact, it's kind of cool. So in the last couple of days before hatching occurs, an eaglet moves, or any bird, moves its head up into the air space at the top of the egg. If you ever had a hard-boiled egg, when you crack the shell, you know how there's that little space in there? So they separate from this membrane inside that's been sort of feeding them diffused oxygen for the whole time, and they start actually breathing air with their lungs for the first time. It's actually one of the reasons that eaglets either tend to die in the first 3 days, embryonic eaglets, in the egg, or in the last 3 days in the egg, because they never use their lungs until they're about the last 3 days in the eggs. So after they start using their lungs to breathe air, they start making noises, and the parents will start sounding back at them. Now, it's my understanding that this is really important in an altricial bird like a bald eagle, because bald eagles hatch blind. So part of the way they know that it's their parents in the nest and not something else in the first few days of life, when they're either blind or not seeing very well at all, is the parents have been talking to the eaglets, and the eaglets recognize their parents' voices when they come into the nest. And I sometimes wonder if you listen over at Decorah, what we call mom's tea kettle whistle, which starts real soft. I sometimes wonder if that isn't actually a food soliciting sound that's very similar to young eaglet's food soliciting sound. So at any rate, yes, they do make sounds before they hatch, and the parents and the children talk back and forth to one another prior to hatch, which I think is just super cool.
Okay.
Is it possible that the mother eagle chose not to feed DNN3 because of the lack of food availability, or did she detect something unknown to us, such as a physical deformity or lack of development? John, what's your thoughts?
I guess what a just straight observation is, it's been whoever's been closest seems to be the one who gets fed. So I guess that would relate back to I don't think it's much choosing. We did see some cases where both mom and dad were feeding at the same time, so there's a higher probability that there might be distributed and food being distributed at the same time if both parents are there with food at the same time. I guess most of what I've observed is whichever one is closest and whichever one is reaching up closest to where the food is, I guess the other interesting thing with the new cams that we noticed this year, it's a little bit off topic, is to see how eagles will place the food by their tongue, very carefully placing and releasing that food with their tongue.
Pushing it in, yeah, it was very cool to see.
We've been seeing that kind of detail.
But, we can't really know if there was a physical deformity. My own guess, and this is a guess, when the few times we were able to isolate DN3 and then compare DN3 with the Decorah eagles at a similar age, right up until the end, the physical development looked pretty normal to me, and it did sort of in that first, roughly 5-7 day period, because they really started to pull apart and grow on about May 2nd. But the two older eagles were entering their steepest phase of growth. You have to understand that a bald eagle attains most of its weight and structural features in the first 40 days of life in the nest, and really most of that happens in the first 30 days of life. So they went into their really steep growth curve, and DN3 just got left behind. It's normal though. That's not necessarily a physical deformity or a developmental issue. Is there anything bald eagles don't like to eat?
The stuff that they don't eat.
Okay. They eat fish. They eat birds. They eat mammals. They eat live. Yeah. They eat dead. I've never seen an eagle bring a snake into the nest, but I assume they would.
We saw fawn deer parts. So
we saw fawn
venison.
Deer parts. Yep.
They'll eat venison. They'll eat.
They eat placenta.
Yep. And I think we've seen a difference in behavior of geographic location of eagles, probably because just of animal raising activities in the Midwest.
Yeah.
And just putting animals out that die. The eagles and other birds, turkey vultures, others will go to those areas to get food and feed. So we know that they like just about anything that's got protein, and that's it could be alive if it's a fish or dead. So
one thing that we saw a couple years ago, it wasn't at our camp. It was in Florida, and I don't know which Florida camp it was. Somebody put a pot roast out for the eagles, and they brought it to the nest. That's not a good idea. There are things you don't want to feed eagles. For example, people who find injured birds of prey will sometimes try to feed them hamburger. You shouldn't do that because it has a really high fat content. Fat is mixed in to make hamburger, and that can get onto their feathers and harm and injure their feathers. So, is there anything wild that an eagle won't eat? I haven't seen it. In fact, they eat turtles at Fort St. Vrain and along the Mississippi River. But can we put anything out and feed them with it, like pot roast and hamburger? No, don't do that.
Okay. I'm just going to go with the one I see here. Did this pair originally build this nest, or was it there?
This pair originally built this nest. The only eagle's nest we ever did build was N2B, and the story behind that is probably most of you know. The tree snapped in the wind and the nest fell. Bob was very distressed about it, and our friend Neil Reddick said, hey, why don't we try building a nest? And we did, and it worked. But building eagle's nest is not commonly something we do. I think it's a useful management tool, but it's not something we do normally.
Right. So we believe that this pair did build the nest. In captivity, birds of prey are kept on strict food management so that they are at an ideal flying weight. Is it important for eagles in the wild, or does it not really matter?
I'm going to say it doesn't really matter, and here's why. Eagles in the wild have to be able to go through times of food scarcity and food abundance, and they have to be able to adapt to both. So birds in captivity are living a completely different life and have different needs than birds in the wild. And so no, if an eagle finds a food, it'll eat it, usually from what we've seen, as much as it can. And if it doesn't find food for a while, that's okay as well.
That's what that crop is there for. Eat what you can while
exactly.
eating's good, right?
Put the food in the refrigerator.
Right. And we've seen that up in the nest too. I think that is one probably a good observation, at least early on. Back down in Decorah, we were amazed at what food showed up in the nest as soon as the first egg hatched. It was like 6 fish in one day, and there's a fish hatchery right over across the street.
Yeah.
And then a bird, and then a squirrel and a rabbit, and so whatever is available, it looks like will be brought up there. It looks like a little bit different availability, a little bit more scarce pickings, whether it's more competition up in that area with other eagles or other critters that are raccoons or others, fox that are grabbing whatever carrion and stuff is out there. I don't know.
Oh, interesting thought.
What are eagles' animal predators?
That's an interesting question. An adult bald eagle does not have very much in the way of predators. A peregrine falcon will attack it, but when you think about a predator, this is something that's attacking it to eat it, not to drive it away from its nest. So an adult bald eagle really has no predators. Raccoons will predate a nest and eat eggs or young. Great horned owls will predate a nest. We had that happen at Eagle Valley back in 2014. I know a red-tailed hawk flew into a Duke farm eagle nest once. I don't remember the year. It did not go well for the red. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
It didn't go well for the red-tailed hawk. Right. So really, off the top of my head, all I can think of would be raccoons and great horned owls. I'm not going to rule out any other sort of aerial predator that's really hungry and sees young. Adults, nothing.
That's what we've seen. Okay, we're coming down to the end here, 3:59. So let's see, any good last ones here?
Okay, you guys, I'll put the link out for the time-elapsed nest footage. I'll put that on explore.org, but I'll also put it on our website. We do have a YouTube channel. I think it's youtube.com/Raptor Resource. But I'll put those links out. You can also go to our website at www.raptorresource.org, and we have a lot of information there. But I will make sure that those links are available for you.
So I guess we'll wrap it up. Thanks for listening. Those or watching, those of you who have tuned in here. Hopefully we've answered some of the bigger questions that you've had, and thanks for joining and watching Explore and doing what you do. Don't get some good activity. Don't vegetate too much, right? Watch these cams. What's that?
Don't want to take any more.
I'm sorry?
Do we want to take any more questions?
Oh, we can. But I guess let me say this before then. I think what our biggest mission here, and I think we have overlap with Explore, and that is to get people connected with nature. And that's one hard thing is people who don't have the option to observe and get out in nature and maybe live a life out in the country and see and experience some of this stuff. People have grown up in the city. You don't really get to see and experience some of those things that you see about animal behavior in the wild. So this is really a neat opportunity to get connected with the reality of what goes on out in nature. So that's another thing that we are really trying to stay close to our mission, and that is to keep this a wild cam, and there's research there. There's research opportunities, and we are very happy to be collaborating in this project with Explore, and it helps us reach more people, and that's classroom kids all the way through, from grade school, kindergarten, all the way up through high school, and college kids, and then a lot of people in hospitals and nursing homes that really can't get out and enjoy this stuff. Really helps them connect with nature, and just the sounds of a spring peeper and listening to the coyotes at
absolutely.
night and
it's
things like
magnificent.
that. It's hard to not listen to that once you get used to starting to listen to it. So
I'll tell you what, we'll take 3 more questions, and we would certainly be available to do this again sometime. So
right.
Okay, so we have, how long does it take to build a nest, and how long does the nest last? In 2012, the Decorah eagles decided they were done with N1. We don't know why. Some eagles do build multiple nests, and they decided to build N2. So they began in October. They hatched young for the first year in 2013. So October, November, December, January, February. So 5 months. They can build their nest very quickly. The nest will last, as far as we can tell, unless the tree splits or the eagles abandon the nest, as long as the eagles continue to work on it. So they're constantly replenishing the nest with grass and sticks and so on and so forth. Some nests last a very long time. The largest bald eagle nest ever was 9 feet wide and 20 feet deep. It weighed over 2 tons. That took a long time to build. But sometimes eagles also abandon their nest very quickly, and we don't really know why.
So, at least part of the nest that we put up there as a starter nest, we saw about a growth in just a couple months. We saw additional 3 feet in diameter added, at least 1.5 feet on both sides, and almost 3 feet to probably 3 feet in vertical height, just in a 2-month period. So they can build pretty fast, and you guys have seen the stick delivery and fighting and placement. Just it's really funny behavior. We've seen one hook the other one with a Y-shaped branch, and them doing tug of war. And Bob always believed that, at least in Decorah, that the male would always have to reposition every stick, but I don't know, that the female brought in.
Okay, so the second question we got, does DN1 seem advanced for its age? We could see it trying to self-feed, picking up loose bits of food and eating them, and also appearing to try to feed on DN3 the night before DN3 died. Would getting the lion's share of the food cause an eagle to develop any faster than normal? So there are some physical constraints that it can't really develop, I guess, faster than it can build cells and structure. So, personally, I don't think it's a precocial eagle. In watching it, if you look at the time frame, they've got 80 days in the nest. The first 40 are spent growing body parts and getting big and developing these behaviors. And the last 40 days are spent growing feathers, wing exercising, flapping,
Right.
learning how to, well, they'll start self-feeding, but really learning how to unzip a fish, really tear into it, mantling food, and so on and so forth. So personally, I don't think DN1 was more advanced than I would expect an eagle to be when I compare them against the data we have from the Decorah eagles. They look well within the framework of normal
Right.
eagle development to us.
We can certainly say from what we saw that it wouldn't have had any delays in growth because of lack of food.
Yeah, that's a fact.
It was getting, we saw a very full crop most of the time, and as Amy mentioned before, that is stored and it can be eaten and used after, that's what the crop is there for, is to store food for future digestion and use.
So a lack of food or anything that really takes energy away from growth can delay growth, but a surplus of food, because they can only build body as fast as they can build body, I don't think is going to make a tremendous difference.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll sleep more. And then the last question, the male parent doesn't seem to be as proficient of a hunter as mom, and he eats food that mom might plan for eaglets. Is this normal? Again, different nests, and it seems odd to talk about because, once again, these are wild animals, so we think, well, hey, they have a suite of behaviors that's not all that dissimilar from nest to nest. But in fact, we do see different behaviors at nests.
Right.
We see different behaviors in Decorah. The one year we watched Eagle Valley, at Decorah North Nest, and at Fort St. Vrain, and then you guys watch a lot more nests. So you know that behavior varies from nest to nest. Personally, I think Dad has done a good job providing food and care. I can't speak to whether or not, Mom wants to save this food and Dad goes, hey, I'm going to eat it. That's not something that I can answer.
And the other thing that we don't see away from the nest is how the parents are eating, their meals on their own, and what's happening away from the nest. So it's pretty hard to tell what's going on there without the full picture of what's happening there. Many of the raptor species, male will bring in food for the female and for the young. And,
Yep.
And we see that a lot with falcons, and I'm sure that's with others. So there are some interesting behaviors of what is done with food delivery.
Yeah, and it does seem like a lot of time in the falcon nest, the male will have some of the food before he brings it over because
Right.
it's simply,
Right.
it's going to go away.
It goes to be pre-prepared, defeathered, and there's usually, it's missing other parts like
Yep.
a head or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Before it's brought up to the nest. So there's some level of preparation that goes on there with falcons, but I'm not sure how much of that happens with eagles.
Yeah, or even if there's some food transfer going on off the nest that we didn't see because, Dad did bring something in and handed it over to Mom where we can't see it, because we know that goes on too. So that's not a question that I can answer as far as Dad's proficiency as a hunter, but I don't think his behavior was unusual.
So, okay, there's your 3 questions. So,
Thank you for chatting with us. It's been just a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Have a great day. Keep
Yep.
watching, and we'll do our best to keep answering questions.